Hello everybody, my name is Sniping is Fun, and welcome you all back to my next The 5 list I'm going to present to all of you here on YouTube. And this time it's going to be a continuation of my recommendation series of lists, and I've already done about 3 or 4 of these so far, and it's going to be basically me recommending certain game genres to fans of that genre and individual systems. I've already done the fighting game genre 3 times so far, Super Nintendo, N64, and the GameCube. Instead of going and jumping to the Wii right now, I'm going to backpedal a generation and jump over to Sony with the PlayStation 1 in my list of the 5 fighting games that all fighting game fans, the 5 PlayStation 1 fighting games that all fighting game fans need to play. Now, for those of you out there that know the freaking PlayStation 1, this was like the behemoth of fighting games back in the day. Like, there were fighting games out the wazoo on the PlayStation 1. If you went and looked into the store on different fighting games, there was probably like a shelf of like 30 billion. Like, this game was like, back in this generation with the N64 and the Saturn, if you were looking for a fighting game, it pretty much was on the PlayStation 1, and this game system had a ton of them. And to actually make a list of 5 specifically for you all to really look into and really need to play and really recommend was kind of hard compared to some of the other lists I've had to make, but I've done it all the same. Now, also, before I mention these 5 on this list, I need to recommend, quickly say, before I get started, I'm doing the same thing I did on the Super Nintendo, 64, and GameCube list. There are certain games on this list I am not, on the system, I'm not going to recommend for you because they are the standard be-all, end-all choices for games on this system. That is the Street Fighter series. No Alpha 3, no Alpha 2, none of the EX series, no Mortal Kombat 4 or, trilogy, no Marvel vs. Capcom, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Street Fighter, any of those games, and especially no Tekken, so no Tekken 1, 2, 3. These are all the major fighting games that everyone recommends, everyone knows about on the PlayStation 1. And if you're getting a PlayStation 1 to play fighting games back in the day, or if you're going out nowadays to buy some PlayStation 1 games that you might have missed, or maybe you never played the PlayStation 1 and want to play some fighting games on it, these are ones you already pretty much know about. I'm not going to do it because that would kind of fill the list up with stuff that everyone all knows about. This is going to be 5 outside of the Tekkens and the Street Fighters and the Mortal Kombats and Marvel vs. Capcoms that all of you, I would recommend, you need to play. So let's get this started with number 1, the first one on my list, and it's going to be a game franchise I just recently talked about on my GameCube list, and that is Bloody Roar. I talked about Primal Fury on that list. I'm talking about Bloody Roar 2 on this one. And for those of you out there that don't know what frickin' Bloody Roar is, I basically mentioned this in the GameCube one. It is basically like a Tekken-esque fighting game that's kind of like, a 3D polygonal like fighting game. You're in like in a little arena to fight, and it's basically, standard fighting game, punch, kick, beat down your guy's life bar. But unlike just being about a tournament of all these different fighters coming from around the world, and about a father who threw his son in the volcano getting revenge, and the King of Fighters tournament or whatever, and all that, it's about people who are essentially experimented on and can turn to anthropomorphic animal creatures, all fighting to pretty much kill each other in this big competition. And there's people that can turn into like lions, tigers, bears. I think there's some bird people. There's a cat lady. I think there's some spider lady. I think in one of them, I'm not sure. There's a there's a person that turns into like a mole. There's a chameleon guy. There's an elephant guy. Throughout the series, it's just really wacky, crazy fighting game. And it's a really intuitive gameplay too. It's not as in depth as say a Tekken, but it is still a freaking good fighting game franchise. And I picked Bloody Roar 2 specifically because it has a larger cast of characters to pick from. So if you like your quantity of characters and you want more people to fight as, you got this add in the second one. And I think, if I recall, having like a deeper combo system, more intuitive gameplay, they improved upon like the original bit. I would still say the first one is still worth playing, but this list, I would strongly recommend 2 more because of the added content and the fixed up gameplay and whatnot. And it is a freaking good fighting game. It's like you have these characters that can fight in their normal human forms, and they have all their unique different fighting styles from their human forms, and then you jump over to their animal forms, and they have unique fighting styles for their animal forms too, and they have more like animalistic like fighting abilities based off what animal they're based off of, like whether it's a wolf or a lion or a bear or a cat lady or whatever. It is a fun fighting game, and for those of you out there that never played a Bloody Roar game, I would strongly recommend it. You can play the original, you can play the second one on PlayStation 1, you can play 3 on the PS2, Primal Fury on the GameCube, which I think is a version on the GameCube of 3. I think there's a Bloody Roar 4 out there somewhere. I would recommend you guys play it, because maybe if you guys play it more, we can finally get a new one. I would love a new one. This series needs a revival. It is a fun fighting game. If you're looking for something out there that's not a freaking Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat or Tekken on your PlayStation 1, I would strongly recommend Bloody Roar, especially the second one. And my second game on this list is going to be a dual choice too, and I know I've done that in multiple lists, and really, quite frankly, I don't care. It's my list, and sometimes I need to share a spot on my list between 2 or 3 different things, and this time it's going to go to the Bushido Blade franchise 1 and 2. And for those of you out there that don't know what the freaking Bushido Blade franchise is, and just like I mentioned with Bloody Roar, this is probably some franchises out there that you probably never heard of because some of them disappeared after a set while of time. Bushido Blade is the farthest thing from a traditional fighting game you could probably ever get. For the simple fact that rounds can pretty much end in like seconds, depending on how well you play and how bad your opponent plays. Depending on how well you guys fight each other, and Bushido Blade essentially is a real like strategy type fighting game between there's medieval European fighters and feudal Japan samurais and whatnot. You can pick your weapons of swords and hammers and whatnot, unless you want the gun lady. In one of the games there is a lady that uses a gun and you can just shoot your opponent, which is very cheap. But it's basically like a real lifestyle simulation kind of fighting game. You put your guys in the arena and they have to fight each other, and depending on how well you play, you can win the match and kill an opponent in seconds, because in a real life combat, depending on how your opponent fights, you can pretty much defeat them easily, or you get your butt kicked yourself. You could pretty much damage your opponent's legs, and they have to crawl around the arena and fight. You could damage it so they only have one arm. It's like a combat system where you have to legitimately kill your opponent. There's no life bars. You only see the damage on your opponent physically, and you have to get that killing blow in order to win the round. And then, quite frankly, it is a really freaking fun game. You can play 1 or 2. I think the second one included a lot more characters and more fighting style weapon combats. But regardless of which Bushido Blade you play, I would strongly recommend you play one of them, because if you don't want a traditional fighting game, and that's especially the reason why I put this on this list, I would recommend this because it's a unique style fighting game that, quite frankly, needs to come back to, just like Bloody Roar. The next one I'm going to say is going to go to the King of Fighters 98, but this could also apply to any other King of Fighters on the freaking PlayStation 1. There's King of Fighters 99, King of Fighters 97, 96. I picked 98 specifically because as far as it's basically, I think, the more well-balanced King of Fighters games for back then. And if you don't know what the King of Fighters franchise is, I feel sorry for you, because it's pretty much one of the best freaking fighting game franchises out there that's not named Soul Calibur, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, or Tekken, or Smash Brothers even. It is as far as I remember, King of Fighters 98 was probably one of the more well-balanced PlayStation 1 King of Fighters games. It's a 2D fighting style game in the vein of, say, like a Street Fighter or whatnot. For those of you that have played some of these SNK fighting games, like Fatal Fury, Art of Fighting, Samurai Showdown, it's basically King of Fighters is their own set of characters with pretty much every other SNK character imaginable, because it has Terry Bogard and Mai Shiranui all in there as well. Most of the returning characters are from the past games. There are characters from past King of Fighters games more returning, because as far as I recall, this game lacked a story mode, so they brought about characters that were in past games that died. The lack of a story mode for this game is not the greatest thing. It's probably one of its detriments. If you want to play an actual fighting, King of Fighters game that has a story, you could play 99 or 97 or 96 or whatnot, but 98 doesn't have a story mode, but you can still pretty much play arcade mode, and pretty much the basic bulk of a fighting game anyways is to do multiplayer, so get your friends together, your family together, and play a freaking game of King of Fighters 98. And I think that's the definitive PlayStation 1 King of Fighters game. And number 4 is going to go to Rival Schools. Now, this is a Capcom fighting game franchise that needs to make a return, and this is a Capcom fighting game franchise that I think a lot of people seem to forget about, except for freaking Sakura, because she still continues to show up in freaking Street Fighter. But this is the franchise she pretty much is intertwined with. She's in the Street Fighter franchise, and she's in Rival Schools. And for those of you who don't know what Rival Schools is, it's pretty much a 2-on-2 fighting game, 3D polygonal fighting game about schools that are pretty much at war with each other. There's baseball players, swim team captains, and all these different clubs, and all these different people that just fight. And for those of you who know who Batsu is, because he's been in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, a lot of people want him in Mario vs. Capcom games. Quite frankly, he should have been in, Infinite. He should make a revival, just like the franchise. People who know who Batsu is, this is the franchise he's from. And basically, it's just a bunch of school bullies and team captains from all different clubs, and the principals and all these different things from schools, just wanting to go at war with each other. And it's so wacky fun. It's such crazy, antics. If you want a freaking Capcom fighting game on your PlayStation 1 that's not named Street Fighter, it's Rival Schools, and it is a fun game. I think there's 2 of them on there, but I'm basically saying the original because I think it was the start of it all, and I think it was probably the better one. And that's about it. Now, let me end this with number 5. And this is going to be, just like I mentioned with the Super Nintendo list, Japanese exclusive game. So it's an import, or you could probably play like a freaking, emulation of it on your computer or whatnot. But I actually own a physical Japanese, you probably just saw what that was for a quick second. I'm not going to show you until I put it up. But I actually own a physical Japanese PlayStation 1 copy of this. And that is Dragon Ball Z The Legends, or Dragon Ball Z Legends 2. This has got to be one of the best Dragon Ball Z games, best fighting games I think I've ever played on the PlayStation 1. Now, there are other PlayStation 1 Dragon Ball Z games like Ultimate Battle 22 and GT Final Bout, but in my opinion, the definitive one on the system is this one right here. And for those of you out there that played this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not a traditional fighting game like Ultimate Battle 22 where it's like one-on-one or 3D-wise like, GT Final Bout. It is a 3D-ish, 2D-ish game, and you basically go through the events of Dragon Ball Z from the Saiyan Saga down to the Buu Saga. It's like a little arena fighting game where it's like usually 3-on-3, 2-on-2, 1-on-1, or a handicap like fight, and you play through the events of freaking Dragon Ball Z, and you can pick who from those battles, like the androids, Cell, Majin Buu, the Saiyans, Frieza, and whatnot, you want to actually play as. And for those of you that have played the new Xenoverse games, it's kind of like a precursor to that. Like, how they have the team battles now in the Dragon Ball Xenoverse games? This kind of was, I think, where they got the inspiration for that from, because this is where it pretty much was originally from. And for those of you looking out there, see this? Like, you could change your, I don't know if you can see it, you could change who you want to fight. This is during, like, the Saiyan Saga. Oh, I want to bring out Krillin and put Piccolo away. It's basically a 3-on-3 or 2-on-2, 2-on-1, 1-on-3, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, fighting game. And it's not a traditional fighting game where you have to beat your enemy's opponent. You beat down a life bar. You beat them up. You build up your power bar. There's a middle power bar, yours and your opponent's, and you pretty much have to build it up so you can do your ultimate, like Kamehameha or Final Flash or whatever. And you have to do it like 2 or 3 times during the fight to actually win. I forgot, it's been quite a while since I played this game. But, like I said, if you are a big Dragon Ball Z fan, and you love your Japanese imports, and you love your fighting games, and if you want a PlayStation 1 fighting game that is from Dragon Ball Z, that's not Ultimate Battle 22 or GT Final Bout, because quite frankly, those two both did get... I'm surprised this one never got localization, because those other 2 games got localizations. This one never did, and I feel this one is the best of the 3. I would recommend this strongly. Dragon Ball Z fan, anime fan, fighting game fan, PlayStation 1 fighting game fan, looking for fighting games on the PlayStation 1. If you're looking for something that's different, this isn't a life bar being, like I said, you have to get your ultimate attacks, beat down your opponents, and eliminate them with, like, your ultimate attacks. You beat down, I think it's like 2 or 3 to actually eliminate your opponent. And, like, you have to eliminate the entire team and whatnot. It's just such good fun, and I really wish they localized this one. And that's it for the 5 PlayStation 1 fighting games that all fighting game fans should play. And they are Bloody Roar 2, although you can still play the original, Bushido Blades 1 and 2, the King of Fighters 98, although you can play any of your King of Fighters you want. I just think King of Fighters 98 was the definitive, most popular PlayStation 1 King of Fighters, Rival Schools, and the best one of all, Dragon Ball Z Legends. See you all later in my next list. I hope you guys like this. Have you guys played any of these games? Have you actually imported and played Dragon Ball Z Legends? Because without my friend Marlon, I probably never would have even learned about that game. And Masquerade Games, if you guys remember anything called, the store used to be like a Japanese import store back in the day called Masquerade Games, please let me know. Because that's where I got that from. Put in the comments what you guys think. Do you guys like these 5? Have you guys played any of these 5? What other PlayStation 1 fighting games would you strongly recommend fighting game fans to play? And I'll see you all later in my next video. Bye.